Welcome to week 4, everyone. Before we move on, can everyone hear me and can everyone see my screen? Yes, good on both parts. Okay, so welcome to week 4. Can you guys believe that we're already in week 4? We've been kind of talking about it in the chat already. It goes by pretty quickly. Sean Ray thought it was week 1. It's kind of quick. That's part of the beauty of Full Sail. Get done with the classes quickly. Okay, so throughout this month, we've been working on the writing process, right? In week 1, you brainstormed to come up with your topic for your essay. You conducted research, and you began to make a plan for your essay. In week 2, you wrote the essay. In week 3, you received feedback from your peers and from your instructor, and you practiced giving feedback to each other. And now in week 4, you're going to take that feedback that you received and you're going to use it to make your essay better. In addition to revising your essay that you wrote last week, there is also a reflection portion in the last assignment. And that's going to give you the opportunity to reflect on what you've learned in the class, so you can kind of understand where you've improved with your writing and also identify some areas where you might want to continue to focus on with your writing. So the lecture today is mainly going to be about your revision and about the final project. For this final assignment, there are 2 parts. The first part is a revision of your essay, the essay that you wrote last week. And the second part is an opportunity to reflect on what you've learned, like I said, so it's a reflection portion. So far in this class, we've been talking about perseverance a lot. We've been researching how our role models persevered. We've been writing about perseverance. But you guys have also been practicing perseverance. So I wanted to ask, how many of you came across an assignment in the class that you found a bit challenging? Anybody have any kind of assignment in the class that they were challenged by or didn't know how to do right away or weren't sure how to complete right away? You guys can answer in the chat. The essay, yeah, just the whole essay assignment. David says no. Well, that's good. APA style, I think Michelle is saying. The essay as a whole, yeah. So you guys came across these challenges, but how many of you were able to push through the challenges and keep going, and you were able to complete your assignment and turn it in? Jordan did. I know a lot of you did because I see your names, and I know that you turned your assignment in because you're in my class. So all of you have encountered some setbacks maybe and some challenges this month, and you've persevered through them to complete the work. You took specific actions to deal with the problems, and that's something that you want to be proud of. So take some time to congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back before you move into all this stuff for week 4. And part of the assignment in week 4, the reflection part, is it's going to give you the opportunity to reflect on all those challenges that you faced and how you overcame them. So let's talk a little bit more about this reflection portion. You're going to want to look back at the things you accomplished this month, as well as the struggles you faced when you were working on class projects. And you also want to consider how you overcame those struggles. So we already kind of talked about the specific challenges you guys faced. Some of you had issues with APA. Some of you had issues just with the essay in general. How did you overcome those obstacles? Like if you had issues with APA, how did you try and overcome that obstacle? Anybody have any strategies they used? Pushing, so right, not giving up, just keeping at it. The internet, right? So looking for resources. If you didn't have that information, you couldn't find it in the class, or you weren't sure, you went and you found another resource. Jordan says referencing the guidelines that were in the class, right? So utilizing all those resources that were in the class, reading the examples and trying to emulate them. Exactly. So these are all strategies. Sean Ray says, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. She says she listened to the lecture and reading again. So sometimes you realize, okay, well, I watched the lecture, I did the reading. Sorry, and maybe I misspelled or mispronounced your name. Anyway, you realize, oh, well, maybe I need to go back and watch the lecture again because I didn't understand it the first time. Sean Ree, okay. Or maybe I need to go back and read that portion of the text again because I didn't understand it. So these are all ways that you have persevered this month. And these are really good lessons because you can take them into your future classes and use the same strategies when you encounter similar problems. So now you know to, ask questions if you're not sure, to look for additional resources if you can't find the answer. And if any of you faced any, time management challenges this month, maybe now you have a better idea of how to manage your time well. So these are all things that you want to consider when you're reflecting on what you learned this month. What have you accomplished? What struggles did you encounter? And how did you overcome those obstacles? So before we move on and look at some strategies for how to revise your paper that are going to help you with the revision, I wanted to first take a quick look at the 2 parts of the assignment for this week so it is crystal clear what you guys have to do and The first part of the assignment is the final revised version of your essay in APA style. So you're taking the essay you wrote in week 2, you're taking the feedback that you received, you're applying it, and you're going to revise it so that it is the best version of that essay that you can write based on the feedback you've received. I just wanted to give you a little tip about this before you start working on your revisions. It's always a really good idea to save the first copy of your essay, then create a new file, copy paste your essay into that file, and start your revisions in that file. And the reason is because when you start revising, you might be cutting things, you might be changing things around. And if you end up deleting something that you actually needed or that you decided later that you needed, if you don't have that original copy, you won't have that text or that information. So always save your original and then start your revision in a new document. So we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies for revision, but the second part of the assignment is to write a reflection essay to explore what you learned about the writing process and how your writing has improved in this class, okay? And the details for the reflection essay are in the assignment instructions, which we're looking at right here. There are 6 questions in the assignment instructions for the reflection essay. You want to make sure that you are answering all of these questions. Don't just answer the first question and then, not address the other ones. You want to make sure that you're addressing each question. And you also want to make sure that you are writing this in an essay format. So don't, go in and write a 1-sentence answer for each of these questions. It's got to be an essay. So it'll have an introduction, a conclusion, and multiple body paragraphs, just like the essay you wrote last week. It's completely up to you to decide how you want to organize the answers to these questions within your essay. But you should be able to figure out how to do that based on the skills that you've learned this month about how to write an essay. So this reflection essay that you're being asked to write, it not only tells us what you think you've learned or what you feel that you've learned in this class, but it also demonstrates what you learned because we can see if you're able to, create a new essay with an introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion. Now, also keep in mind with the reflection essay that you want to go through all of the stages of the writing process with it. So you're not just going to, answer all the questions and turn it in, okay? You want to go through those stages of the writing process. So you want to think about each question, brainstorm some ideas about each question. Then you might want to write an outline for your essay. Then you want to go ahead and draft your essay. and then you want to go ahead and revise it and edit it and make sure it's the best version of that reflection essay that you can turn in. So like I said, there's two components to this assignment, the revision and the new essay on reflection, but they should be in one document. So you're going to have your revised APA essay in one document. So it's going to be the title page, your essay, the references list, and then you're going to go down one page and you're going to start your reflection essay. So both of these essays will be turned in together in the same document. Okay? And you have all of this week to work on these two components. Before I move on to other content in the lecture, does anybody have any questions specifically about how to turn the essay in or requirements for the essay, for either of the essays, the final assignment? I'll give you guys a few moments to type it out if you have a question, and if not, we'll move on. Okay, looks like you are good. If you do have a question that pops up, just hold it till the end of the session. We'll have a question and answer period then as well. Okay, so moving forward, hopefully you've had the chance to watch the short course video on revision. So you may kind of have just a general idea about what revision is about, but today we're going to go into a lot more detail. So we're going to talk about what revision is and specifically how you can revise your essay. So often when you think about revision, you might think, oh, well, it's the last step in the writing process. But as we learned in the week one lecture, the writing process is recursive, right? So it's a cycle, and some of the steps are repeated several times. So revision is not just a one-time thing. It's very common to revise multiple times. For this class, you're just going to turn in one revision. But in projects that you work on in your future career, you're probably going to find that you have to do multiple revisions. You know, you might revise it once and then you get feedback from your boss or from a client or from a colleague, and then you revise it again. You know, you run it by them again, they give you more feedback. So it's a cycle, it's ongoing. Now for this assignment, you're just going to do the one revision. So this assignment, we're really just practicing that process of revision. So just keep in mind that by doing one revision, you may or may not be able to get your assignment up to the level that you'd like it to be. So that's something to keep in mind for the future. One revision is the first step in the process, but when possible, you want to try to schedule time for extra revisions to make the writing as strong as you can make it. So what is the revision process? We already know that it's part of the recursive writing process. During the revision process, you may find that you need to go back to earlier stages in the process. So you may find that you need to go back to the brainstorming stage to come up with additional ideas for the paper. Or you may find that you need to go back to your research and find a better source or find more support for one of the ideas in your paper. Or you might find that you want to go back and reorganize your ideas in the paper, so you might go back to the outlining stage. So just keep in mind that, you know, revising isn't just about making changes. Sometimes it's about going back to previous stages in the writing process. So in order to do this, you'll want to take the feedback that you received and review it carefully. So take some time to digest it and then make a plan for your revision. Now, you may see that your peers and your instructors have all commented on the same things. So if everyone says that organization is a problem in your essay, then you know that organization is something you want to address, okay? But everyone's feedback is going to be a bit different. So if only one person pointed out that, you know, you have comma splices, that doesn't mean ignore it because everybody didn't say it. It just means, you know, maybe everybody has a different point of view when they're looking at your writing, so they might not have picked up on it. So kind of take each piece of feedback that you get and take some time to think about it. So it's a good idea to go through your feedback that you received from everyone, from your peers and from your instructor, and to make a list of every single thing that your reviewers pointed out, okay? And it's kind of like a checklist, right? So it's the things that you want to go through and check for when you're doing your revision. So make your list, and then as you start your revision, you can check things off the list as you fix them in your paper. So when you start revising, what exactly is revising? If we look at the word revision, it's composed of two root words, which means to do something again, and vision, which means to see. So, basically, we're just taking a second look. We're looking at it again. We're looking at it to see where we can try to make it better. So when you're revising, you want to try to look at your work with fresh eyes. You want to get that objective viewpoint that we talked about in last week's lecture. And now you've had a little bit of time away from your essay because you've been focusing on your classmates' writing for the last week, right? You haven't really been looking at your essay. So now is a really good time to look at it again because it's going to be easier to see it with a fresh perspective. And also, now that you've had the opportunity to see what some of your classmates have written, that might have given you a better idea of the direction for your essay. It might have made it a little bit easier for you to pick up on some of the things that you want to change in your work. So there are a few different strategies you can use to revise your paper, and we are going to look at some of those in more detail. As we talked about last week, you always want to start by addressing global issues in a paper. So last week we talked about how when you're providing feedback, you always want to talk about the global issues first. Well, the same goes for revising. When you are revising your work, you always want to start by addressing the global issues. You can start with the global issues that your instructor pointed out and then move on to the global issues that your classmates pointed out. Lastly, after you look at all the global issues, at that point, then you can move on to the local issues. So let's talk about how to address some of the global issues. Okay, so this is just kind of, a summary of basic essay structure. We've kind of looked at this already. Recall that your essay should have an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So some of your essays had some issues with organization. When I graded them last week, I noticed that some of you didn't quite have this structure down. So maybe you put some supporting ideas that belong in a body paragraph into your introductory paragraph instead. Remember that first paragraph, that introductory paragraph, is just meant to catch the reader's attention, to introduce kind of the main idea of the entire paper, and to end with your thesis statement. And the thesis statement tells your readers exactly what they can expect from the paper. So for this essay, a good thesis statement will probably mention three things: your role model, the fact that they've overcome obstacles, and the fact that you can learn something that you can apply in your future career. Okay? So that first paragraph should not include any of the supporting ideas that will be discussed later in the essay. Those ideas go in the supporting paragraphs. Also, you want to be careful about what you include in the conclusion. So when I was grading your essays, I noticed that some of you crammed the discussion of how you will apply what you learned in your career all in. Michelle, say that again. I think you're referring to the thesis statement. Is that what you're asking about? Okay, I'll go over that again. For the essay, a good thesis statement is going to mention the main things that you're talking about in this paper, right? Which is your role model, the fact that they've overcome obstacles, and then what you learn from them or how you can apply that in your career. Okay? So that first paragraph should not include any of the supporting ideas that you're going to be talking about later in the essay. Those supporting ideas go into the body paragraphs. That first introductory is just to tell you what the paper is going to be about. You're welcome, Michelle. Okay, so as I was talking about the conclusion, I noticed that some of you put your discussion of how you're going to apply what you learn, all of it into the conclusion paragraph. But that's not where it should go because that's one of your supporting ideas, okay? The conclusion should basically just summarize what's already been stated in your paper and maybe restate your thesis, okay? It should not include any new information at all. So if you're waiting until the conclusion to talk about how you're going to apply it in your career, you're not doing it right. You want that to be in your supporting paragraphs. So the obstacles that your role model faced, what you learned from how he or she dealt with those obstacles, and how you can apply that in your career all belong in the body of the essay in those supporting paragraphs. And they should all have approximately equal weights. So, you don't want to spend too much time talking about your role model's obstacles and not as much time talking about how they overcame those obstacles and not as much time talking about how you can apply them. You want to be fairly, you want it to be equally distributed, how much attention you give to each of the main ideas. So I want to look at a method that can help you revise the global issues in your essay, some of the issues that we just talked about. Some of you have received feedback from your instructor about focus, organization, and development, and this method can kind of help you with all of those. So if your instructor said that you had issues with focus, that means that you have ideas in your essay that don't align with your thesis statement and don't belong in the essay. Okay, so for example, with this essay, it could be that you've included a lot of biographical information about your role model, but you didn't focus on obstacles and perseverance strategies. Or it could be that you focused on obstacles that your role model faced as a child, but not work-related obstacles. So the focus of your essay needs to be improved. You might have also had your instructor say that you had issues with organization, which we kind of just talked about. So maybe you had information in your conclusion that actually belonged in a body paragraph, or maybe you have information in your introduction that belongs in a body paragraph. You might have had issues with development. So your instructor might have mentioned that you need to add more discussion about an idea, or you need to add support for an idea. To address all of these issues, you can use a method called the highlighter method. And the highlighter method can help you better organize your ideas. It can help you weed out ideas that don't belong. And it can help you find areas where you need to add more support. Okay? So it basically just allows you to visualize where the information is in your essay and easily see if the information needs to be rearranged, removed, or if you need to add information. So I'm going to kind of show you guys what it looks like. Basically, you're just going to color code your ideas, okay? You can use the highlighter tool in Microsoft Word, or you can print out your paper and use an actual highlighter. But you're going to go through your writing and you're going to identify those supporting ideas, okay? Once you know how many ideas you have, you're going to assign a color to each idea. So, for example, if one of your supporting ideas is the obstacles your role model faced, you'll assign one color to that idea. If another one is how they overcame those obstacles, you'll assign another color to that idea, and so on and so forth, okay? Once you've assigned the colors, you're going to go through your paper, read each sentence, and determine which main idea that sentence is about. And then you're going to highlight it in that color that you assigned. And then once you've gone through the entire paper, you're going to be able to see what you've highlighted and if the ideas need to be moved around to improve organization, or if the ideas need to be removed to improve focus, or if more support needs to be brought in to develop ideas. So I'm going to kind of just show you a quick example here and then a more detailed example. Sorry guys, I went too fast. Let me go back. Okay, so see how we assigned blue to supporting idea number 1? So we would go through and highlight any sentence that is supporting that idea in blue. Idea 2 would be orange. Idea 3 would be, this is kind of a weird yellow-green color. So that's the basics of it, okay? But I also want to show you how you can use it to identify the issues. So this is kind of a sample paper. Let me make it bigger so you guys can see it. Now the text itself is gibberish, so don't pay attention to the text because it's not going to make sense. All right, so let's say this is our essay. We've decided that we have 3 supporting ideas in our essay. Supporting idea 1, we've made it green. Supporting idea 2, we've made it teal. And supporting idea 3, we've made it yellow. We've gone through our paper and we have highlighted each supporting idea in its corresponding color, okay? So now we can see where we have some issues in the essay. The first problem is an organization problem right here, okay? So it's green, so it's supporting idea 1, but this is our introductory paragraph. So this doesn't really belong in the introductory paragraph. So how do we fix this? We move it down to the first paragraph where we're discussing supporting idea 1, where all the other green is, okay? So that's one thing that you might see when you're doing this. You might also see another organization problem where you run into an idea that does not fit with the main idea of the paragraph. So here, the main idea of this paragraph is our supporting idea 1. It's all in green, but we have this yellow sentence, right? And that sentence is for supporting idea 3. So it doesn't belong here. We need to move it down to this paragraph where the other yellows are, okay? Now, something else that we might find is a focus problem. So this sentence here that's highlighted in gray, this one, after we read it, we figured out it's not about supporting idea 1, 2, or 3, okay? It doesn't fit. So now we can see that this is not in focus. So we can cut that sentence, right? That'll help us with our focus problem. We can also use this to find problems with development. So for supporting idea 3, you can see that there's only a couple sentences here, right? As opposed to the other ideas which have a lot more development. So we kind of know, all right, we need to maybe go back to our research and find more ideas so we can make a better case for supporting idea 3. And then the last one, which is also another organization problem, we see again here we have a teal, right? Well, this doesn't belong here because this is the conclusion paragraph and this is a supporting idea. It needs to go back up here with the teal paragraph. Okay, so that's just an example of how the highlighter method can actually help you find the issues in your paper and help you kind of copy and paste and get those ideas in the right place. Now, one thing that I will caution you about using the highlighter method, don't expect to just copy paste the sentence. Like, for example, with this green here that we wanted to move down. You don't want to just copy paste it anywhere in that green paragraph, right? You want to make sure that it makes sense, that it flows. So yes, the idea may need to be moved, but you also may need to kind of rewrite the sentence or reorganize the paragraph to make sure the idea fits into the sentence. Okay, so that's one method. Okay, so that's a method that you can use to address a lot of your global issues in your paper. As we discussed, once you're done with those global issues, then you can move on to the editing stage. And this is when you're going to look at the local issues, okay? So maybe your instructor pointed out a few different issues in your paper. So maybe your instructor said that you have comma splices and fragment sentences and run-on sentences. Okay, so that's 3 issues that your instructor wants you to work on. So I have a question for you guys. Knowing that you need to fix these 3 issues, how many of you would read through your essay and look for all 3 types of errors at the same time? Okay. Couple people saying they would look for all of them at the same time. Jordan says I would look for one at a time. For those of you who said that you would look for all of them at the same time, do you think it would be easy to keep track of all of those things at one time when you're looking for errors in your paper? Nope. Yeah. It's a little bit difficult. You're asking yourself to do a lot there, right? You're making it a little harder on yourself that you need to. Exactly. David says, I'd get overwhelmed. So a better way to approach this is to proofread the paper several times, each time looking for only one kind of error. So what we would do is we would start out reading the paper and we would look for only one error. So if our instructor said comma splices, fragments, and run-ons, we would look for just comma splices that first time. And we might even do several proofreads just looking for that one type of error to make sure that we've gotten all of them before we move on to the next type of error. When we focus on just one at a time, it's a lot easier to spot and correct each error. This really allows you to focus on each type of error, and that makes it easier to recognize it when you see it. It also makes it a lot easier to find every single instance of that error in your paper. What I find is that, for myself at least, if I try to do, multiple things at once, if I try to look for multiple different types of errors at once, I will maybe catch them all in the first paragraph or second paragraph, but then towards the end of the paper, I start losing it and I can't catch them. Michelle says she's going to go over them one paragraph at a time, one issue at a time, also a good strategy. So when you're editing, just break it down, work on one thing at a time, don't overwhelm yourself. Okay, so breaking it down and looking at one issue at a time is one way to address those local issues. Another way is the last to first method. We talked about looking at one at a time, but we can also do the last to first method, which is basically, it's kind of like reading your paper backwards. So instead of starting at the beginning and reading through your paper, you're going to start at the very last sentence, read that sentence, and then read the sentence that came before it, and then, sorry guys, my computer's about to die. I've got to plug it in. Okay, sorry. We're back in business. Okay, so you're going to start from the last sentence and read backwards. And the reason that we do this is to trick our brains, okay? So you've spent a lot of time on your essay. You have a pretty good idea of the basic flow of your writing. Your brain is going to have a tendency to skip over any of the mistakes in the writing. So if you have a missing comma, or you have a typo, or there's a word missing, your brain is really good at filling in those errors, and it's going to make it harder for you to see them. So just in general, when you're proofreading, you want to try to find ways to look at the writing with fresh eyes. So if you start at the end and go backwards, you essentially trick your brain into thinking it's the first time you've looked at the writing, and this makes it a lot easier to catch mistakes. Another way that you can do this is to step away from the project for a moment, okay? And I already kind of talked about how this week you've done that a little bit because you have taken the time to look at each other's essays, so you're not really focusing on yours as much. But also, when you're in the process of it, maybe sit down and edit for a little while, then go away and do something else, then come back to it again and do that a couple times. You'll find that if you'll do that, each time you're going to end up finding more of those local issues and being able to correct them. And if you need more help, and we looked at a lot of methods for revising and editing today, but if you need more help, the Writing Center is there to help you guys. That's what they do. They help students with their papers. Now, they're not going to go through and proofread the paper for you, but if you're having specific issues with grammar, they'll help you identify what those issues are, and they'll show you how to correct them so that you can then go through your paper and find other instances of that same issue and correct it on your own. So take advantage of this resource. They offer on-campus appointments, online appointments. just be sure to contact them in advance if you want an appointment for this week. The Writing Center is super busy just in general, but especially the last week of the term. That's when every student wants to get into the Writing Center and get help with their final assignments. So if you want an appointment this week, do reach out to them as soon as possible. Fridays are really busy the last week of the term. If you email them on Friday, you're not going to be able to get an appointment. You do have to request 24 hours in advance. But even like if you wait until late on Thursday to request a Friday appointment, they might already be booked up. So if you know that you're going to need an appointment for later in the week, I suggest contacting them as soon as possible. And then the last thing is that effective revision takes time, right? Just like the feedback that you gave last week, we wanted you to take some time to really consider your peer's essay. We now want you to take that time to really consider your essay and to really make the changes that are going to make it better. Your instructors can definitely tell if you've carefully considered the feedback and applied it in your paper. We can also totally tell if you've just gone through and changed a word here and added a comma here and changed another word here. So don't cheat yourself out of this. You know, this is your time to shine. This is your time to apply everything that you've learned to make your writing better. So just to kind of sum up, assignment 4 includes your revised essay and your reflection essay. It is due on Sunday night, and you have all week to work on it. Of course, you also have your Learn Smart Achieve this week, your last one. I know you guys are excited about that. And you also have your check-in on Thursday. So that's pretty much all the content that I have for you guys. Does anybody have any questions about any of the things that we've talked about today, or about the assignment, or about anything else? Richard, yes, your reflection essay is going to come right after the reference page for your revision essay. So it'll be one document, it'll be your revision essay, and then in that same document right after your reflection. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask in the chat. Jordan asks if the reflection should maintain APA format. In some ways, yes. For example, you want to make sure that it's Times New Roman, 12-point font. You want to keep with the 1-inch margins. But you're not incorporating research into your reflection essay. This is all your ideas about how you've performed this month. So you don't need to include any in-text citations or reference lists for the reflection portion because you're not using research. And as Rochelle Fox noted, yes, also double-spaced lines as you would in an APA essay. It is very difficult to read those single-spaced essays, guys. You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? If you don't have questions, let me know that too, and then feel free to go about your day. You're welcome, Jordan. I don't, maybe Rochelle can answer this question because I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I don't think that this week's reflection comes directly from the PowerPoints, or this week's check-in.
This week's check-in mostly asks you to look at the feedback that you have received from your classmates. I think there may also be one or two questions from the lecture. Let me double check that real quick for you, though. As soon as I figure out what file folder I have this in. this will be easier this way. I know most of the questions are about the feedback that you've received and how you're going to use that. And so it will be important to actually look at that feedback. And there's a question about the difference between revising and editing. So
yeah,
you should be able to answer that one pretty easily. And that's pretty much it. This week's check-in is only 4 questions instead of 5, but we do expect you to be very thorough with the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you have questions or concerns, definitely contact your instructor. If you're in my classes, because I gave you all a couple extra days on the essay, that means that I started grading those essays later than Professor Chapman. So if you haven't received your feedback yet from me, you will have that very soon, probably tonight, at the latest, first thing tomorrow morning. But I'm expecting to have the feedback completed this evening. So if you haven't seen that yet, please don't panic. You will have it very, very soon.
Okay, and I see another question in the chat from Richard. If you're having technical issues with LearnSmart, Richard, you always want to contact FSO support. Calling them is the best thing to do because you'll get someone on the phone right away. But if you're having other issues, what I would suggest is emailing your instructor, letting them know exactly what the issues are so they can help you with those issues.
Yeah, FSO support will usually be able to solve most of the problems with the LearnSmart because most of those problems are actually most likely related to your browser or other software on your computer. Mm-hmm. But if you run into a problem that FSO support cannot resolve, I just put the number in the chat for McGraw-Hill customer support, and that information is also available all over the course site here. So you can find that on the registration activity for your textbook and LearnSmart, and I think it's also on the activities that you mark complete on FSO. So if FSO can't resolve your problem, then McGraw-Hill customer support will be able to resolve your problem.
You're welcome, Richard. Anybody else have any questions? You're welcome, Shanri. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now.